He sat there, knees pulled to his chest, hoodie zipped up to his chin. The wind bit through the thin fabric like it had teeth. Mason didn't shiver anymore. He was used to it, the cold, the noise, the smell of fried food from diners he couldn't. Enter. The street lamp above him flickered, humming like it might give up at any second. Mason reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his treasure, half a tuna sandwich. Still damp, probably 2 days old. But to him it was gold. He unwrapped the greasy paper slowly, like it was a gift. Just as he was about to take a bite, he heard it, a faint, scraping sound behind the dumpster. Mason froze, then came the rustle of paws. Weak ones, dragging Dot from the shadows, a shape emerged. Thin legs, dirty fur. Eyes wide and alert, it was a dog. A German shepherd, or maybe what was left of one. Her ribs poked out like blades under her skin. One paw didn't touch the ground. She limped toward him, trembling. For a second, neither of them moved. Just two souls on the same sidewalk, under the same broken light. Then Mason whispered, "You hungry too?" The dog didn't bark, didn't growl. Just stood there, watching him like she didn't trust anything but couldn't walk away either. Mason looked at his sandwich. His stomach growled. He tore it in half anyway. "Here," he said, stretching his hand out slowly. "I ain't got much, but you can have this." She sniffed the air, took a cautious step forward, then another. Her nose touched his fingers. Gently, she took the food from his hand, soft mouth barely brushing his skin. He watched her chew. She didn't gobble it. She didn't run. She just sat 4 feet away, chewing slow like she wanted to savor every bite. "Yeah," Mason mumbled, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "Me too." The dog looked up at him, then curled her body into a tight ball on the cold concrete. She didn't leave. Mason scooted a little closer. "You got a name?" he asked. "No, me neither. Not really." He leaned back against the brick wall. "They used to call me Trouble. School did. Then my last foster home just called me Boy. My mom used to say my name, though. Real soft. Mason." The dog's ears twitched. She rested her chin on her paw. "I miss her," Mason whispered. "She died when I was 12. After that, it was just places. Doors closing, people getting tired of me." He paused. "You probably had someone too, huh?" She blinked slowly, and for a second he imagined she understood every word. He pulled off his hoodie and laid it gently beside her. "It's not much, but it's warm." She looked at him, then the hoodie. Slowly, she dragged herself onto it. Settled in, closed her eyes. Mason watched her breathe, shallow, but steady. "I'll call you Lucky," he whispered. "Even if we both know we ain't." For the first time in months, Mason didn't feel completely alone. The cold didn't disappear, but it faded a little. The street lamp kept flickering and the city didn't stop. Cars passed, sirens howled in the distance. But in that tiny bubble on the sidewalk, something changed. A boy without a home. A dog without a name. Two broken things sharing what little they had. He leaned back, eyes half closed, stomach still aching. But the ache didn't feel so empty anymore. "Stick with me, Lucky," he murmured, "and I'll stick with you." The night stretched on, and for once, neither of them ran. Mason woke up to something warm pressed against his side. For a second he thought he was dreaming. But then he felt it, the rise and fall of a small chest, the soft tickle of fur against his arm. Lucky hadn't left. She was still there, curled up tightly in his hoodie, her nose buried under her tail. "Morning," Mason whispered, blinking at the cloudy sky. His voice came out rough from the cold night air. He stretched his arms and sat up slowly, trying not to disturb her. But Lucky stirred anyway, lifting her head just slightly to meet his eyes. "You stayed," he said softly. "Didn't think you would?" She gave him a sleepy blink, then tried to stand. As soon as her front paw hit the ground, she let out a tiny yelp. "Hey, whoa, easy," Mason said, kneeling beside her. He touched her leg gently. It was swollen, purple under the fur. "Did you get hit?" he asked. "Or did someone do this to you?" She didn't answer, obviously, but her eyes, those deep, quiet eyes, looked tired. So tired. Mason didn't know much about dogs, but he knew pain when he saw it. I wish I had something to help," he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a crumpled napkin and wrapped it gently around her paw, just to keep it warm. "There, it's not much, but it's better than nothing." Lucky looked at him and then without warning licked. His hand, Mason's throat tightened. "Guess we're friends now," he said, blinking quickly. "Huh, Lucky?" He liked saying her name. It made him feel like maybe she really belonged to him. The morning passed slowly. People walked by. Most didn't look at them. A few did. Some with pity. Some with judgment. One man tossed a half-eaten bagel onto the sidewalk. Lucky tried to get up again, paw trembling. "No, no," Mason said. "I got it." He picked up the bagel, brushed off the dirt, and broke it in half. "Half for you. Half for me. That's the rule now, all right?" She wagged her tail, just a little dot by afternoon. The clouds started to darken. Rain was coming. Mason looked up. At the sky, then back down at Lucky. "We gotta find somewhere dry," he muttered. He checked the alley behind the diner. Locked gate, the old bus stop, full of people, the church steps. Chained off, finally he found a broken section behind a warehouse, a narrow gap between two dumpsters. It smelled, but it was dry. He led Lucky there, carrying her when she couldn't. Walked inside, he laid his hoodie down again. She settled in, resting her head on his shoe. "You ever had someone stay, Lucky?" he asked. "Someone who didn't leave?" She closed her eyes. "Me neither." That night, Mason counted every breath. She took, her chest rising and falling. The way she'd twitch in her sleep. The way she'd flinch if a loud sound echoed nearby. She had scars, one near her ear, another on her back leg. "Somebody hurt you," he whispered. "I know that feeling." He reached out and touched her paw gently. "I don't care if nobody else wants us," he said. "You got me now," and just like that, Mason had someone to protect. And for the first time since he lost his mom, he didn't feel invisible. He had a reason to wake up, a reason to stay, a reason to keep going. Her name was Lucky. The rain didn't let up. By morning, everything was soaked except for the tiny, dry spot where Mason and Lucky had curled up through the night. Mason's hoodie clung to him like wet skin. Lucky shivered in her sleep. Mason looked down at her injured paw. It was worse. Swollen, hot to the touch. He didn't know much about infections, but he knew when something looked bad. "We gotta get you inside," he whispered. Somewhere warm, somewhere safe. He'd heard about a teen shelter a few blocks away. They gave out meals and had mats on the floor to sleep. Maybe, just maybe, they'd let them in. Mason gathered his things, just a torn backpack and a blanket he'd found weeks ago, and scooped Lucky up in his arms. She whimpered, but didn't resist as he walked through the rain. People stared. A few shook their heads. One woman crossed the street. He didn't care. All that mattered was getting Lucky help. Finally, they reached the shelter. A concrete building with peeling paint and a long line of kids waiting outside. Mason stepped into the line, hugging Lucky. Close to his chest, when he got to the front, a tired-looking security guard stepped out. "Name? Mason. I heard you help kids runaways, right?" The man looked over Mason's shoulder. "No pets allowed?" Mason's chest tightened. "She's not just a pet, she's injured. I just need—" "Rules are rules," the guard cut him off. "We got kids with allergies. Dogs bring fleas, I can't let her in." Mason glanced down at Lucky. Her eyes were half shut. She was panting. "Please," Mason said, stepping forward. "Just for the night. I'll keep her with me. I won't let her touch anyone." I said no. Mason looked around. No one intervened. No one cared. He stepped back, heart pounding. Lucky whimpered again. The guard pointed to a sign on the door. "No animals allowed under any circumstance." Mason bit his lip so hard he tasted blood. He turned around slowly, clutching Lucky tight against his chest. He didn't cry. Not there. Not in front of them. But inside. Something cracked. They found shelter under a rotting wooden overhang behind a laundromat. The rain still reached them, but not as much. Mason sat down and pulled Lucky into his lap, using his body to block the wind. "I tried," he whispered. "I really tried." Lucky licked his hand weakly. Mason pulled the blanket over both of them, even though it was already soaked. You saved me from being alone, he said. I'm gonna save you, Lucky. I don't know how, but I will. The storm above them rolled on, and that night, Mason learned something awful. Even places made to help people had rules strong enough to leave someone like him out in the cold, but he also learned something else he was willing to break for. For what the world wouldn't bend, the next morning came slow and gray. Mason hadn't slept. Not really. Every time Lucky whimpered, he jolted awake. Her breathing had grown shallow. Her nose felt hot. The infection was spreading. We need help, he murmured, rocking slightly. You just hang in there, all right? Lucky's eyes fluttered open for a second. She tried to wag her tail but barely moved. Mason stood up, clutching her close. His arms ached from holding her all night. His legs shook. But he walked anyway, no. Plan, no idea. Just desperation. It was just past 7 a.m. when he stumbled toward a small strip of shops. A coffee place had just opened its doors, the scent of espresso drifting into the street. A few early workers walked by, too busy with their phones to notice him. Then someone did. A woman in scrubs, blonde hair tied in a messy bun, coffee in one hand, paper bag in the other. She was getting into her car when she spotted Mason. He didn't notice her at first. He just sat on the curb near the coffee shop and gently laid Lucky across his lap. She let out a weak whine. The woman walked toward him, slowly. You okay? She asked softly. Mason looked up, startled. He tried to stand. I wasn't begging. I swear. I didn't say you were, she replied, kneeling beside him. Her eyes moved to Lucky. What happened to her? Mason hesitated. I found her like this. She's hurt bad. Her paw's messed up and she's not eating. The woman reached into her bag and pulled out a wrapped muffin. She offered it to Mason. I'm Carla, she said. I work at the vet clinic down the street. Mason took the muffin but didn't eat it. She won't last long out here, Carla added gently. You should bring her in. Mason's guard went up. Are you gonna take her away? Carla shook her head. No, but she needs help. Real help, medicine, fluids, x-rays, maybe. I don't have any money. I didn't ask for money. Mason looked at Lucky, then back at Carla. He didn't trust adults, not anymore. But Lucky needed something Mason couldn't give. Carla saw his hesitation. You can come with her. Stay the whole time. I won't touch her without you there. Still. Mason didn't answer. So she set the coffee cup down beside him. If you change your mind, the clinic is just down that alley. Blue door, ask for me. Then she stood and walked away. Mason stared at the coffee. Steam curled from the lid. He looked at Lucky. She was shaking now. Her breathing faster. He picked her up and started walking. He didn't even drink the coffee. He just carried her like she was made of glass. When he reached the blue door, his heart pounded. He raised his fist, paused, then knocked. Carla opened it right away. Come in, she said, stepping aside. The clinic was small but warm, smelled like soap and something floral. Posters of dogs and cats lined the walls. A tech stepped forward. But Carla held up a hand. Only me, she said. He stays with her. Mason followed close as Carla led them into a back room. She cleared a table and motioned for Mason to lay Lucky down. He hesitated. She doesn't like strangers. Then stay by her side, Carla said. Talk to her. Keep her calm. As Mason whispered in Lucky's ear, Carla examined the swollen paw. She frowned. There's an abscess, probably from a puncture wound. She's running a high fever. Can you fix it? Mason asked. His voice cracked. I can try. But we need to work fast. Carla moved with focus gloves on, supplies out, an assistant brought in only when necessary. She lanced the infection gently, cleaned the wound, wrapped it, and gave Lucky a shot of antibiotics. Mason didn't flinch. He held Lucky's head, whispering, You're okay. I got you, I'm right here. And through it all, Lucky never looked away from him. When it was over, Carla took a deep breath. We'll need to monitor her for the next 24 hours. But she's a fighter. Mason exhaled for what felt like the first time all day. He looked up at Carla. Thank you, Carla smiled. You saved her, you know. Most people wouldn't have bothered, Mason stroked Lucky's ear. She saved me first. The vet room was quiet except for the soft beep of a machine tracking Lucky's heart. She lay on a thick blanket, IV taped to her leg, her breathing slow but steady. Her eyes fluttered open every so often, always searching for Mason. He never left her side. Carla brought him a sandwich and a cup of apple juice. Eat, she said gently. You look like you haven't had a proper meal in days. I haven't, Mason admitted, eyes still on Lucky. But she's more important. You're both important, Carla said. That dog would've died out there if it wasn't for you. Mason finally took a bite, watching as Carla typed something into her computer. Is she gonna be okay? He asked between chews. She's not out of the woods yet, Carla said. But the antibiotics are helping. We'll keep her overnight again, maybe longer. Then something on the screen made her pause. Her eyebrows furrowed. What is it? Mason asked. Carla leaned in closer, then looked at Mason carefully. She has a microchip, Mason froze. A chip, like a tracking chip? Carla nodded. Standard for most dogs. If they ever get lost, it helps find the owner. Mason felt his chest tighten. Are you saying she belongs to someone else? Carla didn't answer right away. She clicked through more windows on the screen. Then she turned the monitor slightly so Mason could see. Her name was Bella, she said quietly. Reported missing about 13 months ago. The owner's name is Thomas Reynolds. Lives just 10 blocks from here? Mason stared at the name. So, she had a home? Yes, but according to this report, she was stolen. What? Carla clicked open the police report attached to the record. The guy said someone broke into his backyard and took her. The case was closed after a few weeks. No leads, no suspects. But if this is her, and I'm certain it is, then she's been missing for over a year. Mason didn't speak. His mouth had gone dry. She's yours now, he whispered, more to himself than to anyone. Carla heard him. I know this is a lot, Mason, but technically she still belongs to Mr. Reynolds. Mason looked down at Lucky. She was sleeping peacefully. Now, her paw wrapped in gauze, her chest rising slowly. I can't lose her, he said. His voice shook. She's the only thing I've got. I don't care what some report says. She's mine now. We saved each other. Carla sighed. Look, I haven't contacted him yet. But I think you should meet him, talk to him. If he really loved her, maybe he'll understand what you two have been through. Mason's fists clenched. What if he doesn't? Then we figure it out, together. Carla stood and placed a hand on his shoulder. For now, just stay with her. Let's get her stable. We'll deal with the rest tomorrow. Mason sat beside Lucky and rubbed the spot between her ears. She had a name before me, he murmured. Bella, but I didn't know that. Lucky stirred in her sleep at the sound of his voice. You're still Lucky to me, Mason whispered. You'll always be Lucky. That night, Carla gave Mason a blanket and let him sleep in the corner of the room. She turned off the lights but left the lamp by Lucky's bed on low. Mason couldn't sleep. His mind raced. What if Mr. Reynolds was rich? What if he came tomorrow and took her back without a second thought? What if this man had a house, food, warmth, and all Mason had was a dirty coat and empty pockets? Would Lucky choose him over that? Did he even have a say? He turned over and looked at her. She was still breathing. Still there. He didn't have anything to offer. Except everything. He was and sometimes Mason thought that had to be enough. By morning, the sky outside the clinic had turned a pale orange. The streets were still wet, and the city felt quieter than usual. Inside the exam room, Mason sat cross-legged on the floor, Lucky's head resting in his lap. Carla knocked gently on the door. He's here. Mason's heart dropped. She stepped in, kneeling beside him. His name is Thomas Reynolds. He's in the waiting room. I told him everything everything that matters. He doesn't want to make trouble. He just wants to see her. Mason's fingers tightened around Lucky's fur. She's not going anywhere. I know, Carla said softly. I'm not going to let that happen without hearing your side. But he deserves a chance to see her too. Mason hesitated, then nodded. Fine, but I'm staying right here. A few minutes later, Carla returned, holding the door open. An older man stepped in slowly, leaning on a cane. His eyes scanned the room and landed on Lucky. "Bella?" He said barely above a whisper. Lucky stirred. Thomas stepped closer. His hand trembled. "Oh my God, it's really you." Lucky lifted her head. Her ears twitched. Then, surprising even Mason, she gave a soft, slow tail wag. Mason watched closely. Lucky didn't get up. She didn't bark or leap. But she looked at Thomas like she recognized something. Faint but real, Thomas crouched down with a groan. "I thought I lost you forever." Mason didn't speak. He just sat there, one hand on Lucky's shoulder. "I had her since she was a puppy," Thomas said, glancing Mason's way. "She was stolen out of my backyard. I looked everywhere. Filed a report, hung flyers, drove through every alley I could find. But nothing." Mason finally spoke. "She found me. Couple weeks ago, hurt, starving, I gave her my sandwich. She never left." Thomas studied him now. "You've been taking care of her?" Mason nodded. "As much as I could. I don't got a home, but I never let her go hungry. I slept in the rain just so she wouldn't." There was silence. Then Thomas said something Mason didn't expect. "She looks happy with you." Mason blinked. "What?" Thomas smiled gently. "That tail wag, that's not just recognition, that's trust. You don't get that from feeding a dog once. That comes from love." Mason swallowed hard. "I didn't know she had another name. I just called her Lucky." Thomas chuckled softly. "Lucky, that fits her." He reached out, letting Lucky sniff his hand. She gave it a gentle lick, then rested her head back down on Mason's leg. "She's made her choice," Thomas said quietly. Mason looked up. "You're not gonna take her?" Thomas shook his head. "I miss her. God knows I do. But she's not mine anymore. She's yours." Mason's shoulders dropped with relief. "I can't offer her much," he said. "Just scraps and sidewalks." "You offer her something money can't?" Thomas replied. "Loyalty, safety, that's all a dog really wants." Carla stepped forward. "Would you be okay if we changed the microchip?" "Transferred ownership to Mason officially?" Thomas nodded. "Do it." He stood slowly, wincing. "Thank you for loving her," he told Mason, "and for not giving up on her." Mason didn't know what to say. No one had ever thanked him for anything. "Wait," Thomas said, reaching into his coat pocket. He pulled out a crumpled photo. "A younger version of Lucky, clean, strong, eyes bright. You should have this." Mason took the photo. His hands trembled. After Thomas left, the room felt lighter. Carla smiled. "You did good, kid." Mason looked down at Lucky, rubbing her ears. "We did good," he said. For the first time in his life, someone had seen him and let him keep what he loved. That night felt like a dream. Not the kind Mason usually had, the cold ones, filled with running and sirens and doors slamming shut. This one was warm. After Thomas left, Carla made a call. "I know a place," she said. "They have an extra room, and this time dogs are welcome." Mason didn't ask questions. He just nodded. Lucky was finally able to stand, though her movements were slow. Carla helped them both into her car. The ride was quiet. Rain tapped gently against the windows. Lucky rested her head on Mason's lap, her eyes half closed. They pulled into a small house just outside the city. Not fancy, but clean. Yellow paint. A porch light that actually worked. Carla led them inside. "This is my sister's guest house. She's out of town, so it's yours for now." Mason stepped in and froze. There was a real couch, a table, a fridge that hummed softly, but it was the bed that got him. Big, soft, clean. Lucky sniffed the carpet, tail wagging slowly. Mason watched her with a half smile. "You approve?" he asked. She hopped up onto the bed with a grunt and circled once before lying down. Carla brought in a bag. "I picked up some dog food, towels, and clean clothes for you." Showers down the hall. "You know, in case you forgot what hot water feels like." Mason gave her a small grin. "Thank you." "You're welcome," she said, then paused. "I'll come back in the morning, all right? Lock the door, get some sleep." After she left, Mason stood in the middle of the room, unsure what to do. He peeled off his soaked hoodie, then his torn socks. Everything felt unfamiliar. He stepped into the shower and nearly cried when the hot water hit his skin. Weeks of dirt and city air swirled down the drain. When he came out, he felt lighter. He dried off, changed into clean clothes, and crawled into the bed next to Lucky. She stirred, then scooted closer to him. "I think this is the first real bed I've ever had," he whispered. She licked his hand. He stared at the ceiling. The silence wasn't scary here. It was peaceful. You didn't have to watch his back. Didn't have to clutch his bag like someone would steal it. For once, he wasn't just surviving. He was resting. Mason turned to Lucky and smiled. "We made it through the worst part," he said. "I think maybe things are gonna change now." She closed her eyes. And Mason, wrapped in warmth and something that felt like hope, finally let sleep take him that night. He didn't dream of running. He dreamed of staying. The sun crept through the curtains, warming Mason's face before he opened his eyes. For a second, he forgot where he was. No alley, no sirens, no cold concrete. Just soft sheets, the faint hum of a heater, and Lucky breathing beside him. She stretched out, her paws twitching like she was dreaming. Her fur looked cleaner now, shinier. The swelling in her leg had gone down, though she still limped. Mason lay there for a moment, letting it all sink in. He felt safe. But with safety came memories he hadn't let in for a long time. He pushed them down and got up. Carla arrived around 9 a.m. with breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and a bowl of dog food. Lucky dug into hers like it was her last meal. Carla laughed. "She's got an appetite again." "That's a good sign." Mason sat at the table slowly, picking at the toast. Carla sat across from him. "You sleep all right?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah, I think so." There was a pause before she spoke again. "I meant to ask, do you want to talk about how you ended up on the street?" Mason's fork stopped moving. He didn't look up. "Not really." "That's okay," she said gently. "But if you ever do, I'm here." He stayed quiet. They ate in silence for a few minutes until Mason suddenly said, "I had a mom." Carla looked up. "She got sick when I was 12. Cancer. The treatments were expensive. We lost the apartment. Then we lost her." Carla didn't interrupt. "After that I got passed around. Foster homes, group homes, some were okay. Most weren't. One guy used to lock me outside if I came home late. Another one had too many kids, couldn't even remember my name." He paused. "I stopped unpacking my bag after a while. Stopped making friends. It was easier that way." Carla leaned forward. "What about your dad?" Mason shook his head. "Never met him. Mom used to say he left before I was born." He stared at the wall. "People act like kids are lucky just to have a roof over their head, but they don't understand. A roof don't mean nothing if no one under it cares if you eat or sleep or disappear." Carla's voice was soft. "That's a heavy thing for a 16-year-old to carry." Mason looked at Lucky, now licking the empty food bowl. "She made it lighter," he said. "I don't know why she followed me that night, but I think I needed someone to see me, and she did." Carla's eyes shimmered. "You both saw each other." Mason finally looked at her. "I ain't asking for pity. I'm just, tired of pretending like I'm invisible." "You're not," Carla said firmly. "Not anymore." Mason let the words sit. They felt strange. Like trying on a jacket that didn't fit yet. After breakfast, Carla helped wrap Lucky's leg again. "You're good with her," she said. "Really good? Have you ever thought about working with animals?" Mason laughed. "I can barely take care of myself." Carla smiled. "But you did. You took care of Lucky when nobody else would." "That means something." He shrugged, but he didn't say no. Later, as Carla left, she handed him a small folder. "It's information about youth support services, places that don't just give you a bed, but also help you figure out what comes next." Mason stared at the folder. "What if I mess it all up?" he asked quietly. Carla turned to the door. "You won't, but even if you do, people will still care. That's what second chances are for." She left. Mason sat on the couch, Lucky curled up beside him, her tail tapping his leg. He opened the folder. Maybe, just maybe, This was his second chance. The next few days felt almost unreal. Hot meals, warm showers, clean clothes, a safe roof. Mason tried to enjoy it, but deep inside, a storm was building. Carla checked in every morning and evening, and Lucky grew stronger by the day. She limped less, ate more, her eyes looked brighter, but Mason, he wasn't healing as fast. He sat on the porch that afternoon, hoodie pulled over his head, Lucky lying at his feet. The sun was out, but his mind felt dark. He stared at the folder. Carla had given him resources for jobs, housing, therapy, GED programs. He'd flipped through it 10 times already, but today, it just felt heavy. All of it felt too big. Too far. Too impossible. Lucky nudged his hand with her nose. I don't know if I can do this, Mason whispered. What if they see me for what I really am? Just a screw-up with no home, no parents, no future. He blinked hard. What if I lose you too? Lucky rested her head on his foot like she was saying, you won't. Still, the voices in his head grew louder. You don't belong here. You don't deserve help. You'll mess it up like always. Mason stood suddenly. I need air, he muttered. Lucky tried to follow, but he stopped her gently. Stay, just for a bit. He walked aimlessly. Past empty houses, closed shops, a park where kids laughed, their parents sitting on benches. It made his chest ache. He ended up on a bridge, not too high, not too low, just enough to feel the wind press against him. He gripped the railing, staring down at the slow-moving river below. He wasn't thinking clearly anymore. Just memories flashing, his mom coughing in bed, the social worker closing the door behind him, the bruises he never told anyone about. Everything came crashing back. What's the point? He whispered. Then footsteps. And a bark. He turned. Startled. Lucky. She had followed him, limping all the way, eyes locked on him like she knew something was wrong. Lucky? He said, his voice cracking. She barked again, not loud. Just firm? Then she sat right in front of him, refusing to move. Mason dropped to his knees. I told you to stay, he said, tears slipping down his cheeks. Lucky pressed her forehead to his chest. And just like that, everything broke. He sobbed into her fur, shaking. I can't do this. I'm not strong like you think I am. But she didn't pull away. She just stayed, and that was everything. Mason stayed on that bridge for a long time, holding her, the sun dipping low behind the trees. By the time he stood again, his mind was clearer. He wasn't okay. But he wasn't alone. He looked down at Lucky. Let's go home, he said softly, because even if he didn't feel like he had one, she had decided he was hers, and that made all the difference. The next morning, Mason sat at the kitchen table, Lucky snoring softly beside his chair. Sunlight spilled across the floor, warming her fur. She looked peaceful, finally free from the pain that had followed her for weeks. Mason had barely touched his breakfast. His mind was still stuck on the bridge, on how close he'd come to giving up. Carla arrived right on time, carrying a brown paper bag. Brought you guys breakfast burritos, she said cheerfully. Thanks, Mason mumbled. She noticed the dark circles under his eyes. Rough night? He didn't answer at first. Then he nodded slowly, almost did something stupid yesterday. Carla's face softened. But you didn't. He looked at Lucky. She stopped me. Carla nodded. That's what they do. They don't let you quit. There was a moment of quiet. Then she set the bag down and pulled something out of her coat pocket, a folded paper. What's that? Mason asked. A job offer, she said simply. Mason blinked. A what? You remember how I said you're good with animals? Yeah, but I thought you were just being nice. I was being honest, Carla said. There's a shelter downtown. They need help walking dogs, cleaning kennels, feeding rescues. It's nothing fancy, pays a little, but it's a start. Mason stared at her. You think they'd really hire someone like me? I already talked to the director, she said. Told them everything. They said yes, even with no ID? No address? No parents to vouch for me? You have something better, Carla said. You have a story. You have heart. And you have Lucky. Lucky let out a sleepy groan and rolled over. Mason looked down at the form in his hands. I've never had a real job before, Carla smiled. Everyone starts somewhere. He hesitated. What if I mess it up? Then you learn and try again, she said. Nobody's expecting perfect. That hit him hard. Because for so long, it felt like everyone expected him to either be perfect or disappear. Carla handed him a pen. Want to go meet them? Mason nodded. Yeah, I think I do. They packed up Lucky in the back seat and drove across town. The shelter sat behind a small row of trees, surrounded by chain-link fences and the sound of barking dogs. Inside, the walls were lined with photos of animals before and after adoption. Mason stood nervously as Carla introduced him to Maria, the shelter director. She was short, sharp-eyed, and wore a t-shirt that read "Rescue is my religion." So you're the one who fed a sandwich to a stray and ended up saving her life, she said with a smirk. Mason rubbed the back of his neck. I guess, you nervous? She asked. A little. Good, that means you care. She handed him a volunteer badge. We'll start with 3 days a week. If it goes well, we'll talk about pay. You in? Mason looked at Carla, then at Lucky, who sat beside him like a tiny bodyguard. I'm in, he said, and just like that, he wasn't homeless anymore, he wasn't jobless, he wasn't invisible. He was becoming someone, and it started with a leash, a mop, and a dog who had once limped into his life like a ghost. And stayed. Mason stared at the small white rectangle in his hand. It wasn't much. Just a name tag plastic worn around the edges with his name written in thick black letters. Mason Volunteer Staff. It was the first thing he'd owned in years that had his name on it. Not a number, not a case file, not a temporary ID written in pencil. Just his name, like he mattered. First shift nerves? Maria asked as she handed him a bucket and mop. Kind of, Mason admitted. Never done anything like this. You'll figure it out, she said. Dogs are easy. They don't care what your past looks like. They care how you treat them now. That made Mason smile. Same with people, I guess. Maria didn't answer that. Just gave him a knowing look before walking off to answer a phone call. The shelter was noisy, filled with barking and squeaking toys and the occasional loud crash when one of the bigger dogs knocked over their water. Mason started with the kennels cleaning, scrubbing, replacing dirty blankets with clean ones. The work was hard and smelled awful, but something about it made him feel grounded, purposeful, every time he passed by Lucky's corner of the shelter. The special room Carla had arranged for her while she fully healed her tail would thump against the floor like a drumbeat just for him. Hey, girl, he whispered through the gate. Don't worry, I'm still here. She licked the bars and replied. By lunchtime, Mason was exhausted. He slumped onto a bench in the back lot, covered in fur and soap suds. Maria came out with a sandwich and bottle of water. You earned this, she said, tossing him the sandwich. Thanks, he said, unwrapping it. It's weird, I'm tired, but I feel good. Maria sat beside him. That's what real work feels like. Especially when you're doing it for someone else. Mason nodded slowly. Feels like I'm finally building something. You are, she said, and I think you've got a future here. If you want it. He looked at her surprised. Really? You're responsible. You listen. You don't complain. That puts you ahead of half the people I interview. Mason laughed. That's a low bar. It's still the bar, she said with a grin. I'm gonna talk to the board. See if we can get you on payroll part-time. Mason looked down at his sandwich, suddenly not hungry. Thank you, he said, voice low. Maria stood. You earned it. That night, Carla stopped by the guest house. She brought dog treats for Lucky and sat with Mason at the table while he filled out the paperwork Maria had given him. I never thought I'd have a job, he admitted. Or a fridge, or, a place where someone actually notices. If I leave, you're not invisible anymore, Mason, Carla said. Not to us, and not to her? Lucky barked once from the couch as if to agree. Carla slid something across the table. A set of keys. What's this? The guest house, she said. It's yours. At least until you're ready for something more permanent. Mason stared at them like they might disappear. You're serious? Carla smiled. One condition. You gotta put a name on the mailbox, Mason blinked. A real address? Yeah, you'll need it soon for your paychecks. And maybe for... College applications later, he laughed. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but deep down, something flickered. A thought he hadn't let himself think in years. What if I'm not just surviving? What if I'm meant for something more? That night, Mason wrote his name on a small strip of paper and slid it into the mailbox outside. It wasn't fancy, but it was his. For the first time since his mom died, Mason didn't feel like a ghost walking through the world. He felt real, and so did his future. It had been 2 weeks since Mason started at the shelter. Every day felt like a small win, new routines, a growing bond with the animals, and Lucky's steady recovery. Her limp was almost gone now, and she had become the unofficial queen of the shelter, wagging her tail like she owned the place. One rainy afternoon, as Mason was cleaning out food bowls in the back, Maria called out from the lobby, "Mason! Someone here to see you?" He furrowed his brow. "Who?" She shrugged. "Says she used to know your mom." That stopped him cold. Mason wiped his hands and made his way to the front. Standing near the desk was a woman in her 40s. Her hair was streaked with gray, but her eyes were familiar, warm, searching. "Hi," she said softly. "You probably don't remember me. I'm Dana. I worked at the diner where your mom used to waitress." Mason's heart thudded in his chest. He hadn't heard anyone say "your mom" in what felt like forever. Yeah, he said, unsure what else to say. "I remember the diner." Dana smiled gently. "She used to bring you in after school. You'd color on the napkins with crayons. She always said you were the brightest part of her day." He looked away, suddenly blinking too much. "That was a long time ago." "I've been looking for you," Dana continued. "After your mom passed, I lost track of where they placed you. But when I saw that photo Maria posted online, you and Lucky, I knew it was you. Same eyes? Same look on your face she used to have when she talked about you." Mason said nothing. He wasn't sure if he could trust the lump rising in his throat. "She always worried what would happen to you," Dana went on. "But if she could see you now, working, standing on your own, taking care of that dog, she'd be proud." Mason swallowed hard. "I don't know. I've made a lot of mistakes." "She made mistakes too," Dana said. "But that didn't stop her from loving you." They stood in silence for a beat, then Dana pulled something from her purse. A small photo, crinkled and faded. It was Mason, maybe 5 years old, sitting on a counter at the diner, wearing a paper hat. His mom stood behind him, laughing. "I kept this," Dana said, handing it to him. "Thought maybe one day you'd want it." Mason stared at the photo like it was a window into another life. He nodded, voice barely a whisper. "Thank you." Dana smiled. "If you ever want to talk, or if you need anything, I'm still in town. Here's my number." She scribbled it down on the back of a receipt and handed it to him. Then she looked over at Lucky, who had wandered in from the back, tail wagging. "She looks happy," Dana said. "She is," Mason replied. "We both are." After she left, Mason sat down with Lucky and placed the photo on his lap. "That's her," he said quietly. "That's the woman who gave me everything she could." Lucky rested her chin on his leg, eyes watching him closely. "I thought I lost all of her," he whispered. "But maybe not everything's gone." That night, Mason pinned the photo to the wall above his bed. It was just a piece of paper, but to him, it felt like a piece of home had finally come back. The vet gave the green light on a Friday morning. "She's healed enough," Carla said with a grin. "Still go easy on her, but she's ready for short runs. Off leash if you're careful." Mason felt something stir in his chest. Pride, relief, joy. "She's been waiting for this," he said, rubbing Lucky's head. She responded with an eager bark like she understood every word. Carla handed him a harness. "Start with the fenced park near the shelter. Quiet, safe, just you two." Mason nodded. She loved that. That afternoon, he picked up Lucky's favorite tennis ball, the one she'd refused to let go of since the first day she was well enough to play. They walked side by side to the park, Lucky tugging a little more energized than she'd been. In weeks, the park was empty. Green grass stretching under a sky filled with low, golden sunlight. Mason clipped off her leash slowly, kneeling in front of her. "You ready?" Lucky barked once, tail wagging wildly. "All right then," he grinned. "Go." And just like that, she flew, not limped, not walked. She ran. Her body stretched out in full stride, her ears flapping back, eyes locked ahead. She circled the trees, skidded across the grass, and barked at the sky like she was chasing joy itself. Mason stood frozen, watching. It hit him harder than he expected. The last time she ran like that, she must have still had an owner. A home, a safe place. Then someone took it away. Now she was back, not to the same life, but to a better one. One she'd chosen, and he got to give it to her. He sat down in the grass, letting her run wild. She stopped only to drop the ball in front of him, panting, eyes bright. "Where'd you learn to run like that?" He laughed. She pawed at the ball. All right. One more." He tossed it again, and off she went, chasing freedom like she'd never known pain, a woman walking. Her toddler passed by on the other side of the fence. She smiled at the sight. "That your dog?" Mason hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, she's mine." And for the first time, it didn't feel like a lie. When the sun began to set, Mason called her back. She returned with her tongue hanging out, chest heaving, and flopped into the grass beside him. "You earned it, Lucky," he whispered. "Every second of this." She licked his hand and rested her head in his lap. The sky turned pink. The wind was soft. And Mason knew this was what healing looked like. Not just bandages and vet bills, but running again, living again. Together. Mason had started to believe things were finally going right. He had a job he liked, a bed to sleep in. Lucky was healing. The world felt less sharp, less cold, but life doesn't always move in a straight line. It was just after closing time at the shelter. Mason had stayed late to clean out the puppy kennels. Maria had left early, and the place was quiet except for the soft hum of fans and the occasional rustle of paws on tile. Lucky was with him, snoozing in the corner like she always did when he worked late. That's when he heard it. Glass shattering. He froze. Then voices. Two of them, low, fast, moving through the front lobby. Mason grabbed Lucky's leash and whispered, "Come here." She stood immediately, ears up, body alert. Mason crept toward the edge of the hallway, peeking around the corner. Two figures in dark hoodies were rifling through the donation bin. One of them kicked the office door open. No alarms. One said, "Told you this place would be easy." The other one laughed. "Grab the cash box. Let's get out." Mason's heart pounded. He had no phone. Maria had taken the only landline when she left. Lucky growled low in her throat. "She!" Mason whispered, but then they heard it. "Someone's here," one of the intruders snapped. Suddenly, footsteps were pounding toward him. Mason turned, grabbed Lucky, and bolted through the back hallway. "Hey, kid! Come back here!" They chased him fast, loud, angry. Mason burst through the side exit, Lucky right beside him. The night air hit like ice. His feet flew across the gravel lot, heart pounding in his ears. He didn't stop until he reached the alley 2 blocks away. He ducked behind a dumpster, pulling Lucky close, hand over her mouth to keep her quiet. She didn't bark, didn't flinch. She knew. They sat there for minutes that felt like hours. Listening. Then sirens. Someone must have reported the break-in. Mason peeked out. The shelter was lit up with red and blue lights. The men were caught, still. His body shook. His hands wouldn't stop trembling. Lucky nuzzled his cheek. "You're okay," he whispered. "I got you." But deep down, he was scared. Not just because of what happened, but because for the first time, he had something to lose. Maria called him an hour later. "I'm so sorry, Mason. You okay?" "Yeah," he said quietly. "Just shook up. They smashed the front door and trashed the office. But we'll be fine. Insurance will cover it. We'll fix it." Mason nodded, even though she couldn't see. "Take tomorrow off," she added. "You've earned it." He hung up and looked at Lucky, now sleeping again on his lap. They were safe, for now, but Mason realized something important that night. Healing doesn't mean bad things stop happening. It just means you're stronger when they do. And with Lucky by his side, he was ready for whatever came next. The next morning felt quiet. Too quiet, even though the break-in had been stopped. Mason couldn't shake the feeling that everything was fragile again. Like it could all fall apart with one wrong step. He sat at the table with a cold cup of coffee, Lucky curled up at his feet. The photo of his mom still pinned to the wall caught the morning light. A soft knock broke the silence. He opened the door to find Carla holding an envelope. "This came to the shelter," she said. "Addressed to you." Mason blinked. "Me?" She nodded. "Looks like it's been passed around for a while. Different stamps, old postmarks. Someone was really trying to find you." Mason took it slowly. The handwriting on the front was shaky but careful. "Who's it from?" Carla asked gently. He flipped it over and read the name. His throat tightened. "Dana," he whispered. "The woman from the diner. She must have sent this before she found me in person. Want me to stay while you read it?" He looked down at Lucky, then back at Carla. Double quote, "No, I think I got this." Carla smiled and stepped back. "Call me if you need anything." He sat on the couch, ripped open the envelope, and pulled out a single page. It was written in blue ink. The corners smudged like it had been folded and unfolded a dozen times. He read slowly, "Dear Mason, I don't know if this will ever reach you. I've sent copies to every shelter, school, and youth program in the area, hoping someone might know. Where you ended up, your mom was my best friend. I knew her before you were born. She used to talk about you like you were made of gold. You were her whole world. I remember the way she held you when you were a baby, like she was holding something too precious for this earth. And I remember the day she told me she was sick. She cried not because she was scared to die, but because she was scared you'd be alone. She made me promise something, that if I ever found you, I'd remind you of who you really are. You are brave. You are good. And you are worthy of love. This world isn't easy, especially for kids like you. But you were never meant to fade away. You were meant to shine. If you're reading this, I hope you're safe. I hope someone's feeding you warm meals and calling you by your name. I hope you found something or someone to hold on to, and if not, don't give up. Not yet, because someone out here remembers you and believes in you. Love, Dana." By the time he finished reading, Mason's cheeks were wet. He held the letter against his chest. His eyes shut tight. Lucky shifted beside him and rested her head in his lap. "Like always, like she knew, I'm still here," he whispered. "I didn't disappear." He reached up and pinned Dana's letter beside his mom's photo, a piece of the past, a piece of the future. Both reminders that he mattered, that he belonged, that no matter how lost he'd been, he had always been worth finding. 3 weeks after the break-in, life had settled again. Mason was back at work full-time. Lucky was stronger than ever, trotting beside him like a shadow. People around the shelter had started calling them the comeback duo. Maria even put their picture on the volunteer board with a little paw print sticker that read "Miracle Team." Then one morning, Carla burst into the shelter, grinning like she'd won the lottery. "Mason, you're not gonna believe this." He looked up from sweeping the kennels. "What?" "A reporter saw the shelter's post about you, and Lucky, they want to do a feature, full story." "You, her, everything." Mason froze. "Wait, like TV?" Carla nodded. "Local news, evening segment. Community spotlight kind of thing." "I don't know," Mason said, suddenly nervous. "I'm not good with cameras. What if I sound stupid?" Lucky barked as if to scold him. Carla chuckled. "You have nothing to prove. You just tell the truth. That's what makes your story matter." 2 days later, the camera crew showed up. A friendly reporter named Jamie introduced herself and the team. Mason stood near Lucky, shifting on his feet as the microphone was clipped to his shirt. "Just speak from the heart," Jamie said. "This isn't about being perfect. About being real." The interview started slow. Mason talked about finding Lucky, how she was hurt, how she wouldn't leave his side. Then he talked about sleeping on benches, about the sandwich, about how a stray dog gave him a reason to survive. "I didn't rescue her," he said at one point. "We rescued each other." Lucky sat beside him, tail wagging. She pressed her head into his knee like a living exclamation mark to his story. They filmed him cleaning kennels, walking dogs, laughing with Maria. They caught Carla hugging him. After a shift. At one point, Jamie asked, "What would your mom say if she could see you now?" Mason looked at the camera, eyes glassy. "I think she'd say, 'I finally made it home.'" When they were done, Jamie smiled. You're gonna touch a lot of hearts, Mason. He shrugged, unsure what to say. The segment aired that Friday night. Maria hosted a small watch party at the shelter. Everyone huddled around an old TV in the office. There it was. Mason and Lucky, their journey told in 3 minutes, but packed with emotion. The part that hit hardest was the ending. The screen faded to black as Mason's voice played, "We didn't need much. Just a second chance." Everyone was quiet for a moment after then Maria said, "You just gave hope to every kid who thinks they're alone." Mason looked at the screen one last time. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about what came next, and who might need his story to start their own. The morning after the news story aired, Mason woke up to the sound of Lucky barking at the door. He rubbed his eyes and shuffled over, expecting Carla or Maria. Instead, there were packages, envelopes, a stack of them, dozens, maybe more. He blinked, picked up the top envelope. No return address. Just his name, Mason and Lucky. He tore it open and pulled out a letter. "Dear Mason, I saw your story on the news last night. I cried. I'm a foster mom in Ohio, and I've had kids like you come through my door, brilliant, brave, but caring more than they should have to. You reminded me why I keep doing this. Never forget how far you've come. Lucky is lucky to have you. With love, Karenni." Opened another. "And another, you give me hope. My son ran away last year and we haven't found him. But watching you made me believe maybe someone helped him like Carla helped you. Thank you for sharing your truth." Another one was a crayon drawing from a little girl. A picture of Mason, Lucky, and a house with hearts around it. She'd written, "Don't ever be sad again. You have the best dog in the world." Emma, age 6. Mason sat on the floor, stunned. Lucky sniffed the letters, tail wagging gently. "People really saw us," he whispered. He carried the letters inside and started reading them one by one. Each one was different, but the message was the same. You matter. A few people sent small gift cards. One woman offered to pay for Lucky's vet bills. A retired vet from another state even offered to consult if Lucky ever had future health issues. Mason was overwhelmed. That afternoon, Maria drove over in her dusty old Honda, a huge grin on her face. "I knew this would happen," she said, handing him a small box. The station forwarded this one to the shelter. Inside was a worn leather collar. Etched into the buckle were the words, "For Lucky, who reminded us all how to stay." Mason swallowed hard. "People are amazing," he murmured. "They are." Maria nodded. "And you brought it out in them." Later that night, Carla stopped by. She brought another stack of envelopes and sat with him on the floor. "I don't even know how to answer them all," Mason said. "You don't have to," she said. "You just keep living your story. That's the answer." He leaned back against the wall, Lucky resting her head in his lap. "You think I could actually do more, like tell my story to other kids like me?" Carla smiled. "I think that's exactly what you're meant to do." For a long time, Mason had believed the world had no place for someone like him, a runaway, a ghost in his own city, but now strangers were writing to him like he was a light, like he was someone worth writing to, and maybe, just maybe, the sun had just begun to rise, spilling soft gold across the porch as Mason opened the door. Lucky stretched beside him, her tail sweeping slowly against the floor, eyes half closed. Peaceful. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't feel empty anymore. Mason stepped outside barefoot, feeling the cool wood beneath his feet. For the first time, the word home didn't feel like something borrowed or temporary. It was real. He sat on the porch steps, Lucky settling beside him, her head resting on his knee. Carla had officially transferred the guest house lease into his name the day before. He had an address now, a job, and next week he'd be speaking at a local youth center, sharing his story with teens like the one he used to be, lost, scared, and invisible. "You ready for all that?" Mason asked, looking down at Lucky. She lifted her head and licked his hand. "I guess that's a yes," he smiled. Inside, the living room walls had changed. Where they were once bare, now hung letters. Photos, that old picture of his mom holding him in the diner. Dana had sent more memories, a scarf, a recipe card with his mom's handwriting. He'd framed them, not to stay stuck in the past, But to remember what he'd come from, Maria had surprised him 2 days ago with a part-time staff badge. Not. Volunteer staff, real pay, real hours, and lucky? She was now the shelter's official therapy dog. Kids who came in scared or sad would sit with her. She had a way of making them feel safe, just like she'd done for Mason. She had healed. And so had he. Later that morning, Mason walked to the mailbox. Inside was a small envelope with no return address. Just his name. He opened it carefully. Inside was a note, handwritten in thick black marker. "You don't know me, but I saw your story. I was living in a car, thinking about giving up. Then I saw you and Lucky, and I didn't. I got help instead. Just wanted you to know. You saved me too." Mason's hands trembled as he folded the letter and pressed it to his chest. He looked down at Lucky, who was wagging like she could feel the moment too. "We saved each other, remember?" he whispered. That night, Mason lit a candle beside his mom's photo. He didn't say much, just looked at her face, feeling something settle in his chest. "I made it, Mom," he said softly. "I really made it." He didn't need riches. He didn't need fame. He had warmth. He had purpose. He had a dog who once limped into his life, broken and silent, only to teach him what it meant to stand tall again. Mason lay in bed with Lucky, curled against his side, both breathing slow and steady. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, soft like a lullaby. And inside, Mason finally knew what peace felt like. He was no longer a stray soul in a world that didn't see him. He was home for good.